Welcome to the RedState Weekly Briefing. I am your host, Aaron Gardner, managing editor of RedState.com. This week, it is a smaller crew. It is just myself, Thomas LaDuke, wave to the people, the people's voice right there. And we also have Joseph Cunningham along with us, as always. And this week, we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to hit some news topics right up front and just talk about some of the major stories of the week. A couple things that happened this week, of course, are the lack of indictment for the police officer involved in the death of Eric Garner, a case in New York involving the sale of loose cigarettes to avoid sales taxes. And basically, it came at the heels of the lack of an indictment in the case in Ferguson, which, from everything that has been shown from the grand jury releases that have been done, it seems that an indictment there probably wasn't actually justified. So we now have this one coming out, and in this one we see that most everybody agrees that an indictment was justified in this case. And well, there's some who disagree with that, but most people on both sides of the aisle seem to agree that this case seemed to involve some sort of over aggression by the police in this case, and that the death was ultimately a result of the strain that the police put this person through, Eric Gardner, through when they tried to arrest him. So I want to jump right into that case and start talking about some of these details. But I also want to talk about some of the things that have been said already about this case. We've had people say that this case is all about race. It's just another incident of a white cop going after a black a citizen who had done nothing wrong and didn't resist or anything like this. We've had people come out and say that the politicians are to blame because of the taxes that are involved here, and it's a silly case. We've had people come out and say that there's absolutely no racism involved in this case because there was a black officer on the scene when it all happened, and she was also female, so you're probably a misogynist as well as you if you think that she being there doesn't count for something. But honestly, to me, there's a lot of this stuff that is relevant, okay? But in the end, we have a citizen of the United States who was tackled and taken to the ground after a very mild resisting of arrest. The question to me is, is every cop incident abuse? But I think we should say, was this cop wrong? Was this incident abuse? We should look at these things as individuals just as we should look at individuals as individuals and not take a collective position on this. So I want to go to LaDuke first on this and have you kind of talk about this from the people's voice perspective, and let me know, what do you think is important as far as background on this case, and what do you think is just kind of background noise?
Aaron, it's good to be here again on Red State Weekly Briefing, and also it's good for you to finally acknowledge that I am the people's voice, because I am. What you said does make some sense. There is some validity there that we shouldn't lump this in, although I find a disturbing trend amongst the politicians passing laws and the police enforcing it of stupid things being passed and then enforced, the end goal being putting more money in the coffers through something other than direct taxation. And on the other Red State show, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends, our very first show, they jumped right into this.
Yes, it did.
About confiscation of property, that you are not charged with a crime or convicted, actually, and they confiscate property and what have you, and that's a huge issue right now in Michigan. And all of the law enforcement agencies are like, no, we don't change the law. We want to keep property that we just took. There's been an increasing attitude, and I think it needs to be called out. And this was a I think, a perfect example, unfortunately for this gentleman who died, and it was caught on videotape, of the police acting, enforcing a law, that it is a law, it's against the law to sell loose cigarettes, but why in the hell is that law, A, in existence, and B, why are they going into an enforcement mechanism on something that is so incredibly minor? It calls into play, what in the hell has society come down to, and why do certain individuals that are given to protect us or to enforce the law, not protect us, your protection is your own responsibility, to enforce the laws, to help society or whatever, that they're given this much power to, I mean, cigarettes? Selling individual cigarettes? What in the hell is going on in the United States of America? The next thing you're going to tell me is Joe Cunningham is going to be people's sexiest man alive. It doesn't make any sense.
You're right. It doesn't make any sense. It especially doesn't make any sense when you consider that our nation, before the revolution even, we had an incident like this. It was called the Boston Massacre, or the incident on King Street, depending on which side of the pond you're from. But basically, we had an incident where the people were upset with these local military members they were in the colonies, but they were from Britain, coming around and collecting these taxes. And honestly, these taxes weren't heavily burdensome or anything like that compared to what we do today. But the principle of the matter was important, especially in the establishment of the colonies and how they had lived and the culture that they had lived under. They were big free traders. So this was important stuff to them. But at any rate, what ended up happening is these British soldiers ended up killing a bunch of people in broad daylight. One of our founding fathers and second President John Adams had to defend them as a lawyer, and a few of them even got off. Now, this is an event that ended up being formative and leading to the revolution. So I think, there's an article up on Slate basically giving Rand Paul a ration for talking about the tax angle. Let me just. And I think it's important that the tax angle be mentioned, considering the historical context of a police presence and violence due to taxation.
We all have pet peeves, right? And since the age of 16, which was a very long time ago for me, when I started driving a vehicle, the state of Michigan passed a law that said, it was a seatbelt law. If you weren't wearing your seatbelt, well, by golly gee, we were going to pull you over and tell you it was a bad thing for you not to wear your seatbelt, and there was no fine. A couple years in, they went up to $10, then $25, now $65. And they actually have two what I call police fundraisers every year around Labor Day and Memorial Day, where they actually have cops sitting lines out on roads looking through binoculars to see if you're wearing your seatbelt. And the reason that they do this is because it puts money in the pension funds, at least here in the state of Michigan. It's a 60-40 split. Now, what in the hell is it any business of anybody if you're wearing a seatbelt? You're not injuring anybody but yourself if you get in an accident. And people rolled over for this, at least in this state and probably across the country. There has been an encroachment on freedom to raise revenue in this country for a very long time. And I'm not saying that Eric Gardner's death is a direct result of that, but people, you really have to examine what in the hell are these people passing laws and then expecting these guys to enforce them for, and then basically forcing them and saying, look, if you don't pull people over, if you don't do this, you're not going to have, you guys are going to get laid off. You're not going to have X amount of dollars in your pension funds and everything. It really has to stop, and hopefully this is a loud bullhorn for this, because it does, as you mentioned in the beginning, Aaron, it does look like across political lines, a lot of people are extremely offended that here this guy was out there selling loose cigarettes, and the cops decided, okay, this had to be enforced and taken in, and now he's dead.
Right, and just the matter in which he was taken down, the manner in which after he was down, he was treated, the fact that he sat there and no EMTs came. I mean, there's a lot of things that make you upset about this as a result. And Slate Magazine, I wanted to mention this. They have a post up saying, in giving this ration to Rand Paul about mentioning the tax stuff. But they make a good point also. This was a tragedy. And also Ferguson was a tragedy.
Yeah.
And what happened in Cincinnati or in Cleveland was a tragedy. These things were all tragedies. But the fact that it's a tragedy, it doesn't change the details of the case. They can all be tragedies, but they're also all different in different ways. And I think, we should look at those differences and see what the root causes are. To simply say that the root cause of this is racism and to walk on is ridiculous.
That is.
I just don't see it.
And you know what the other in the second part of this is, the sad thing is, okay, this cop wasn't indicted. Hopefully the grand jury testimony is released to be able to take a look at this. But the feds are going to nail him on a civil rights charge. He's going to get nailed on the civil rights charge. And this isn't a civil rights issue. Okay? Do I think that this guy should have been charged with manslaughter like the medical examiner said? Probably. Was it a civil rights thing? Absolutely not. So they're going to get the result, but they're going to do it through, I think, a corrupt means.
And that corrupt means is going to establish a precedent and be, from there on, used again and again and again. Now, Joe, I want to bring you into the conversation as well.
Are you sure?
What was that?
Are you sure you want to bring me in on this conversation?
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on
From
this.
Louisiana.
That's what I've been going back and forth on this, but I want to know: do you think that these different catalysts should be discussed beyond the big racial narratives, or do you think we really should just be focusing on race like this?
Columbia Law School is offering for students to push back taking their midterm exams, claiming these students are claiming that they are under a lot of emotional distress over these cases. This is an actual story that's come out today. We are taking the case of Mike Brown, the case of Eric Garner, and we're making them martyrs when, in the case of Mike Brown, the evidence doesn't show him to be a martyr in any way whatsoever, and in the case of Eric Garner, we're making him a martyr for the wrong reason. Mm-hmm. The reason that we should be looking at the Eric Garner case is, one, the case of this overly taxed product in tobacco, and the over-response of the government to this. And it is something we can make him a martyr on the use of excessive force by police, which we know that there are instances of this out there, and we know that, yes, in some cases the use of extreme police force is motivated by race. We can't prove in either of these cases that that's what happened here, although the feds will, like LaDuke said, try to nail the New York guy on this. But we have this instance where the use of excessive force, the use of force, and we're talking about Eric Garner. We're not talking about the 12-year-old that was killed in Cleveland by a cop who all reports now indicate should not have been even holding a gun in the police force, much less on a police force.
Oh my God.
We have these other instances of these issues, and we're not getting reports on that. We're taking two very specific cases and blowing them into proportions they shouldn't be blown up to, and that is the danger of the current quote-unquote civil rights movement, is that we are trying to force into civil rights causes things that should not be put into these specific categories. And I think that once we miscategorize these things, that's where we're going to have the problems further down the road.
Well, I think as a conservative, we also should be pointing out that frivolous laws and the I could say the criminalization of life by big government is a reason why a lot of these things happen. You got police who are getting involved in issues that they really shouldn't be getting involved in. And back a little while there was the the young black man from San Francisco who had the video, and he said, police pull over a car full of black people because inevitably they end up finding a gun, drugs, blah, blah, blah. Well, there is a certain logic to this idea that, we live in a country that's supposed to be based on liberty and also consequence for choices, okay? Now, we've totally messed that all up at this point, and now we have it to where we've overcriminalized all these different circumstances of life, and we shouldn't be pulling people over for little stupid stuff and hitting them with crimes. We shouldn't be taking a guy down to the pavement over Loosies. I mean, there was a time when America, you go back to Tocqueville and Democracy in America, and you read about how life was, and the amazement that he had was that you'd never felt or saw the hand of government or the force of government. It was always the community taking care of us. And we've gone so far beyond that. You feel government in everything you do. A long time ago, Eric had a post on the front page of RedState that was talking about, I think it was Washington State, had banned sodium inside some dishwasher detergent or something like that. And he said, at what point are people going to pick up their shotguns and say no more? And I think something like getting killed over selling Loosies is something that people should riot over. I'm not a fan of riots, but at this point, I'm willing to go ahead and say, hey, let's go for it.
Oh, now, what are you doing? Joe, you have to come out and condemn your fellow writer at RedState for saying that he wants to riot over peanut butter and jelly taxes. What is the matter with him? Joe?
No, it's not just peanut butter and jelly taxes. It's everything. It's everything you do in life is taxed. If you want to drive to the airport in Denver and take the fastest route possible, you're going to get taxed for it by driving on a toll road. If you just want to drive through New Jersey just to get to another state that doesn't smell like New Jersey, you'll pay for it because they have to tax you as well as assault your nostrils. It's ridiculous.
What Aaron is saying, LaDuke, and I do somewhat agree with this, he's taking the classic mantra from the Beastie Boys. You have to fight for your right to party.
That's right.
We at some point, we do have to stand up, and the things that we want to enjoy in life, whether it be tobacco, whether it be fine cheese because the Food and Drug Administration is trying to, or is banning the classic cheese aging process, and all these other stupid things the government is trying to get rid of, at some point we do have to push back and say, right, you might be going a little too far here. And yes, I invoke the Beastie Boys in a political discussion.
That's fine.
It's just like what Rick Santelli did with the stimulus issue and the economics. It's the same thing, but I mean, this is a whole cultural collapse, and not just the collapse of our economy or anything like that. We need to begin to stand up. And you know what? All those people who bitch and moan about the GOP not standing up and having a spine in the Senate and in the House, where are you?
Hold on. Okay, no, you're dumping a bunch of different apples in a basket here. Being that I am the voice of the people, and I am much more libertarian than you two clowns on any day of the week on any issue. When you say that you want to riot, you are basically saying that the system in place today is absolutely not functioning, which was the case at the founding of this great nation some 240 some odd years ago. We have areas to address this still. And what happens is when you have a Ted Cruz or a Mike Lee or a Jeff Sessions come up and go, whoa, or a Rand Paul, you see the backlash on them. And why? Because they are challenging the status quo and saying, you know what, we really don't need government in every aspect of our lives. So it is not, in my humble opinion, which is the opinion of the people, may I once again add, that it is not time to grab the pitchforks and go down and act like we're at a Louisiana State football game. Not yet.
We don't do that anymore.
Well,
no, the KKK marched to Ole Miss for that game, not to LSU. Let's just remember that.
All right.
here's where we've reached peak progressivism. This is where progressivism is absolutely at its best if you love satire. The people who want to ban these certain things and who want to tax these things are now getting pissed when the government comes in and uses a little too much force that they've been granted in order to enforce that. It is now, the Ouroboros snake is now eating itself. We've reached that point where too much government, or calling for too much government, is leading to too much government. The people calling for it are now pissed, and they don't understand why.
And they're going to ask for more power to the government to solve a problem that the government inherently has created and is exacerbating.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That's the cycle. But speaking of the cycle, we are 21 minutes into the show, and we should really move on to our next segment in the show. So let's keep this moving along to something equally as enraging to me as these cases of lack of police indictment where it's justified, these cases of blaming things on racism where it isn't justified. This is a case, and we've seen stuff like this before. This is a case that got blown up by Rolling Stone this last week. The supposed case of an alleged gang rape by a fraternity against this girl named Jackie. Now, since the story initially came out and every rad femme out there decided it was time to once again bring out the chants of the patriarchy and threaten to cut off penises and do all the crazy stuff that they do, it's come out basically that the whole story was a lie. That major parts of this were fabricated, that the reporter with the Rolling Stone never spoke to second sources, and never spoke to the accused, never got the name of the accused rapists in this account. So this has sparked a lot of controversy, of course, and as we mentioned last week, there's a real story of rape that happened, but he was a Democratic staffer for the former senator from Louisiana, Landrieu, who used Ambien to get his victims to fall asleep so he could rape them. Now, this UVA story, like I said, it turned out to be false, and now you have different things that are happening. Some people are going after the accuser. Some people are going after the journalist. Some people are still saying that those of us who are, can be penetrated by observable fact are rape truthers. But, overall, this whole thing is a mess for the left. It's a mess for the feminists. It's a mess for Rolling Stone. It's a mess for all those people who immediately claim that there's a war on women coming from the conservative side of the political ideology. It's a mess. So I want to get into this, and I'm going to go to you first, Joe, on this one. So tell me what, I've never been in a frat. I never even really, I didn't go to college. I went to the Army instead. I don't know what the culture is like at a college. I never went to a frat party. And I just, assume it's something like living in Seth Rogen's brain. So you tell me, what should I expect from this? What sounds like truth and what sounds like fiction? And how did a reporter, a journalist, become so sloppy? And is it all about confirmation bias?
When I first went to college in the year of our Lord 2006, I spent exactly 1 week in a fraternity as a pledge before wising up and getting the hell out of there. And from what I can tell you from the one frat party I went to, there's copious amounts of liquor. And I've had this confirmed by multiple sources and my own observation of being invited to some others and staying independent for the rest of my time in college. What I've never seen, now of course I went to a small university in a small town, what I've never seen is anything close to a quote-unquote culture of rape. I've heard about such things. I've heard of, but then again, feminist theory is based on the fact that if you have a penis, you are automatically oppressing women. So I take it with a grain of salt at times. um, when we have the society of guys, a society of guys, a society of upper middle to upper class white guys, and they are in a collective group together. It's no different than the racial prejudice one feels when you come across a group of another race. There are stereotypes that develop based on some observable behaviors. What happens here is that you
like
have...
everybody thinking I got good credit just because I'm white?
Exactly. You know, there's observable evidence that white people have good credit. There's also observable evidence that black people and Hispanic people and other races have good credit, but for some reason you decided to make this all about white people, Mr. Patriarchy. So yeah, we'll go ahead and say that. There is this believed culture of patriarchy, and with patriarchy comes dominance over women, and from dominance over women comes the idea that it's automatically rape. And so this keeps going and going and going, keeps getting pushed into these new narratives. And this writer, who, by the way, had done another expose piece for Rolling Stone talking about rape in the military, so there's clearly an agenda with this writer. With this writer, we have, okay, somebody's telling me this story, her friends have gotten her introduced to me, I'm going to tell her story. And that's where the journalism ended. And as somebody who got trained in journalism, as somebody who had to go through journalism school, which, by the way, is not as awful as it sounds. Yes, it's still awful, but not as awful as it sounds. There is verification that has to come here. You need to get multiple sources to back up the information you're running. Rolling Stone is one of these big legacy names in the world of media. We're supposed to think of Rolling Stone and think of, okay, this is a fairly good magazine, although granted, in the last handful of years, they've decided to go a political route and have turned what might have been decent work into utter crap, and you can see that crap even permeating into their 2014 list of top albums, where that Free U2 album was at the top of their list for some reason. You know, Rolling Stone, I'm sorry, please turn your kids away from this, but Rolling Stone, that was a dumb decision. So this writer for Rolling Stone had an agenda, decided to do an expose on something that she did not even bother trying to confirm. And what happened? All the holes got picked up. And all the holes got picked up, one of the big names that came about it, the editor who Stephen Glass worked under. You have people burned by guys like... Even Stephen Glass is probably sitting at home like, dude, you should have verified this. The New Republic has some experience in this. So when New Republic guys are saying, go and check shit, sorry, you go and you check stuff.
Right. I do think you're right. And I'm going to pass this over to LaDuke here for a minute and get his opinion on it as well. But before I do, I will remind everybody... we are taking your questions. Joe is looking at the pound RSWB feed on Twitter, looking for your submissions, and we will go back to those questions at the end of the show and answer some of them. So, Pope Sparkles, Lunatic Rex, I know you guys are out there, and we will get to you later in the show. So make sure you send us a question, all right? Now, LaDuke, I want to talk to you about this. Now, a long time ago, we had the Duke rape scandal, and
what's that got to do with me?
Well, let me just say this: we've had a lot of these things,
stereotyping you based on your name,
that didn't actually match up.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, you know, do you think there was some actual real incident that occurred here, or do you think this whole thing was another one of these like Duke incidents where most of it was made up?
Sounds like this is mostly made up. I haven't. I mean, I've just read some, peripheral stuff on this. Let me just follow up with something. Is this Rolling Stone author? This is a female?
Yes.
Yeah.
She is the reason why the 19th Amendment should be repealed.
You're thinking of Leon's show. That's a different show.
No. I've had this view for a while, and this woman right here, she is the reason why the 19th Amendment should be repealed. because evidently her little pea-sized brain was so burdened with worrying about who to vote for, she put together a crap article that basically was based in nothing but PC regurgitated crap that she probably learned in journalism school, that Joe Cunningham probably helped her with her notes to pass that journalism school.
I was in broadcast, not news writing. Sorry.
Whatever. So I'm basically of the everybody on our side always, when something like this happens, I go, oh, see, look at that bias. Okay, guys, we know the books are cooked. ABC, NBC, CBS, they couldn't utter Jonathan Gruber's name. All right, they couldn't do it because they were like, so I can't talk about it and everything. The books are cooked. Rolling Stone, all of these. I mean, you know what? A lot of the people over at Rolling Stone, they think that Salon's hip and they want to try to be Salon. They want to get over to that type of, level of, stupidity. So, kids, look, you're going to get crap like this. Point it out. Pound them. Just pound them. Don't say, look, this is another example of liberal bias. Just pound them for being wrong. Pound them hard, and let's repeal the 19th Amendment.
Pound them hard and repeal the 19th Amendment. I think that's probably the best way we could possibly end LaDuke's.
I was okay with Aaron saying penetrating, but pound them, LaDuke, you go too far.
You go too far, LaDuke.
You know what? Hey, Joe, just because of that, I'll drink that.
Yeah, Aaron. Well, just so you guys know, I don't know if you saw what I titled the RedState Weekly Briefing this week, but I basically said that Rolling Stone rapes us all with this UVA story. Rapes our intellect. It's just so stupid for them to go and do this and allow this to happen and not have any fact checkers, not have the layers and layers of editors, which we've always been told these professional media outlets have. Okay, but it's just absolutely ridiculous.
I miss the good old days when the Rolling Stone was known for quality, like covers that featured glamour shots of the Boston Bomber. What happened to those days? Why can't we go back to those magical times?
You're a jerk. You're a jerk. That's right. But do we know that it didn't go through the normal process? I mean, what is the normal process at Rolling Stone? It's probably, hey, we got this article about rape. Let's do a couple lines of coke. I mean, we don't know what the system is. They basically look. The Rolling Stone's been crap since right after their first article featuring John Lennon in the in that Army movie. All right. Rolling Stone has been junk. It's been, we got to lead the counterculture and everything. Whatever the hell their damn mission statement was back in '67. The hell with this. These guys, we don't know what their protocol is, but what we do know is that it's crap. Okay, and you know what?
Yeah,
pound them
it's obviously crap. And I would have say one thing. You said they want to lead the counterculture. That should be an indicator of how much crap it is. How can they claim on one hand to be the predominant culture and we should all accept what they have to say about the culture and then claim to say that they represent the counterculture? You don't represent the counterculture and the predominant thought of culture. How can you do that? You can't.
Yeah,
You're false.
I open up a can of worms there. You used counterculture like 5 times in 3 seconds. That was impressive.
It was.
That really was good, Eric.
It's why my wife married me.
Because you say counterculture 5 times in 3 seconds?
Yeah.
Do you do anything else in 3 seconds or less, Aaron, that your wife loves you for?
I can't share that on a family show.
Well, hey, Joey giggled. I'll drink to that.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so now, I feel like this show, this topic, is
off the rails.
Off the rails. It's off the rails. We're a little bit off the rails with this, and honestly, I think it's a very stupid topic. Anyhow, I think the predominant rape culture in America isn't what the left portrays it to be. It's the left walking around all this time claiming what is and isn't rape, and then basically, blowing it all out of proportion. I mean, basically, they'll tell you that if you say that a transvestite is a confused person, well, you basically raped them or something.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
It's absolutely ridiculous. That's all I'm saying. Their whole
I had a
philosophy
friend.
is just based on walking around and saying you're a horrible person because you did this. And this
I
week
had
it's
a
rape. Last week it was being a white cop.
I had a friend. I had a friend that she was a victim of an attempted rape by somebody that she did not know. It wasn't the Lena Dunham type of BS. Okay. It is a very, very horrible thing. It has long-term, consequences for
And
people.
that's why this sort of story is so awful.
And that is exactly right, because what they just did was they demeaned it. Okay, you want to make a political point about something, all right? There's a million different ways to do that. But to go around and just basically pump up a story because rape is a horrible thing, but you're going to lie about it, now you just demean that. You've lessened the value of it, and you're an idiot for doing it. And that's why you, author of this Rolling Stone article, not only should not ever be allowed to write anything ever again via Neil Kinnock's speechwriter, Google that, kids, you should not be allowed to vote ever again in any country, let alone hell. Thank you.
I like that.
Yeah,
Like
that was kind of,
we're going to go ahead and end that topic. And we're going to move on to our last discussion of the night, which is going to be about a little project that I was lucky enough to be a part of just this last week, the Franklin Center. And Joe, if you could go ahead and give a shout out to the Franklin Center in the tweets. They brought me up to Denver and put me in a nice hotel over the night to go up and tour some schools, a charter school, and listen to some different education reformers here in the state of Colorado. And they're going to be doing this across the nation for different regions and also nationally in D.C. And their effort is to really get people to know more about what charter schools are, what school choice is, and what's going on out there in the different states for education reform. And I got to say, I was really appreciative of the event because I learned a lot. One of the first things I learned, and I'm basically gonna this is my shorthand way of remembering it. Charter schools are public schools that do more with less money. That's the very first thing that I learned about charter schools and choice here in Colorado. And I also want to mention the reason why I'm talking about this week isn't just because of the efforts of the Franklin Center, but also here in Colorado, my home state, we have a big school choice decision that's being decided in our Supreme Court, our state Supreme Court, this next week. So be on the lookout for that story from me this following week on RedState.com. But I wanted to talk to you a little bit about a school that we got to tour that was very innovative. It was actually a Jesuit school called Arupe Jesuit High School, and it was in Denver. And it started back in 2003, and it's a private Catholic prep school, which is also a charter school. It's in a residential neighborhood, and you really wouldn't have expected this to be a school from the outside. It's pretty amazing because they help the underserved people in their community. They actually have a cap on income for those who come to their school, meaning if you make over a certain amount of money, you can't even go to their school because they basically say if you can afford us, you can't attend us. And what they do instead is they work with the kids and actually place the kids from 14 years up in actual real-life jobs for 8 hours a week. And that ends up paying for over half the cost of these kids attending this school. The rest of it, of course, is the per-pupil funding that comes through the Department of Education here in Colorado, which is an interesting discussion that I'll get into in my post later on this week. But what was so unique about this school is just that corporate program, the work program that they had to end up paying for the cost, and then also 100% of their grads have been accepted to go on to college. And the high expectations that they place on these kids and the way they help them through life at the same time is really amazing. And it gives you a a sense of what education of America in America could be. So I want to talk to Joe a little bit. I know you live in a state that, with Governor Jindal, he's actually worked a bit on education there in Louisiana, and that's been one of his issues, actually. And I want to talk about the school choice issue and the innovations that we see coming from conservative, Republican education reformers, and even some Democratic education reformers. So let's go to you first and tell me what the situation is in Louisiana and some of the surrounding areas that you know of.
Well, for here in the state, first of all, full disclosure, I am actually a teacher at a STEM magnet academy, and it is what we consider in my area a school of choice, meaning that kids can choose to go to the school I teach at. They have to have a certain grade point average in science and math, and they have to interview to get into our school, and they do. We get some great kids through there. We have kids in high school who go and take classes at a career center, and we have a bunch of great programs like that. But here in the state, for years in the New Orleans area, we had a voucher program. It was a lottery system where you would sign up, and if your name got drawn, you could get a voucher to choose to go to a different school, and that money would, instead of the state would pay the money for you to go to that private school. Well, Bobby Jindal saw this plan and decided, okay, we're going to make it a statewide voucher lottery, and so that's what they did, and it got fought in the courts by special interest groups, education union groups, that kind of thing. Jindal came out on top in that particular fight. So we've got this voucher system now, and again, full disclosure, I remain skeptical of a voucher system because of my inherent distrust of government, in that I think if the government has strings into private schools, especially Christian schools, it can, under the wrong or in the wrong hands, that can be abused. But overall, the idea is a good one. Georgia, I think a year or two ago, voted in a statewide charter system there, and which I actually like a little bit more than the voucher system. But the voucher system in the state is good in that it helps get kids out of failing schools and into better schools. There is a caveat.
And I think you should actually let's pause there for just a second and make a point. Oftentimes, when the right makes the point that Joe just made, that it gets kids out of failing schools and into schools where they can thrive, opponents of education reform will often go to the well of, oh, that only helps out rich white kids who can afford private school, because they associate private school with a high cost, and they don't understand, or maybe they do understand and are just dependent on the naivety of those who don't understand, that charter schools receive public funding as well. So yeah. I wanted to note that real quick before we went too far. And also, going back to the Sarupe High School that I actually toured, 91% of those who attend this school are Hispanic. And if you know anything about Denver, Hispanics are definitely in the lower class as far as, a lot of them, most of them are on the reduced lunch program throughout the public schools and stuff like that. So getting these people who not only 91% Hispanic, but 90% of these are the first generation to attend college, 69% of the first generation to graduate from high school, and 85% of them have ended up going on to four-year schools. And this is after they've come from public schools and tested grades below where they were. After 4 years in this charter school, they're now excelling. So I just wanted to note that it is everybody in every family who can benefit from this stuff, and it doesn't just go towards rich white people who can afford private school.
Well, see, that's the hilarious thing, is that Eric Holder, in his infinite wisdom, his Justice Department decided to sue the state to stop the voucher program because he said, or the Justice Department said, it hurt the cause of desegregation, which is weird considering that you're sending the poor black kids, the ones who are trapped in the failing schools because of demographics and because of districting, they're moving out of there and going to schools that are filled with predominantly white kids. And so you're integrating those private schools more, but somehow that's hurting desegregation. I'm not sure how that worked out. And it was a laughable charge, and everybody in the media kind of like, are you sure this is is this what you really want to do here? Everybody questioned that move, and I think for the most part they've backed off of it. A judge kind of ruled in the Justice Department's favor. There was kind of basically the state's got to hand over their information to the feds and everybody. It's kind of minor stuff. Jindal basically came away with a win on that one. But the idea, the idea, school choice, at the very least, school choice, if not abolishing the federal education department and leaving it at state level, leaving it at state control, school choice is fantastic in that it gets kids who are trapped in schools surrounded by those who don't care, who don't want to participate, and lets them go to schools where they have like-minded folks. Now, there's a caveat with that, and that is, and I see it at my own school, there are parents who send their kids to these better schools in hopes that those schools will be what fixes their kids. And that's something you've got to look out for, and that's something you do have to consider, is that some of these kids who are going into these schools may not want to be there. Their parents are putting them there, and that can have a negative impact on that culture and on that society. But overall, the opportunity to get kids into better places is one that we, as not just conservatives, but as a country, should be working toward. And working at a school that does this has been a phenomenal experience. So I encourage anybody, if you still question school choice, stop. Basically, is all I want to say, and really look at these issues. Look at the charter systems. Look at magnet schools and STEM schools. Look at private schools, and look at the work they've done in turning things around.
Well, you're right. People need to stop questioning school choice and start understanding it. And I think part of that begins. One of the speakers who came that the Franklin Center brought to us to speak to us, he made a point that there's an assumption across America that education is a public good, and so therefore the government should be able to control it. And but actually the individual is the primary beneficiary, and therefore the government claim to control is not justified. The public good of education is a secondary benefit to broader society, but is only so when the education isn't dumbed down. And I want to point that out because a lot of times the problems that people cite in our education system, those on the left, those on the right, those who support reforms, those who don't support reform, is often the teacher ratios, the class sizes, the fact that that there isn't any way to teach to the individual rather than the group. But charters, private homeschooling, or charters, private schools, home choice, homeschooling, choice policies, these are the actual answers to teaching to the individual rather than the group. Now, LaDuke, I want to ask you as well. We're lucky. We each represent totally different regions of the United States, so we probably all have relatively different education systems in our states. So I wanted to ask you what the situation is in Michigan and what is happening there as far as choice, charters, private schools, and education options.
They have all of that, pretty much what you guys have covered. And being that I don't have the little curmudgeons like both of you do, I always find it fascinating listening to this because, I mean, I'd be absolutely, I don't want to say terrified, but I'd be worried about what is being taught while the little mindful of mush is not in your care, Monday through Friday. I have an incredibly simplistic view of this, probably because I don't have kids, and that is I think the voucher system for like medicine would be great. It'd be awesome. You're assigned a dollar amount, and you go out and you hit the free market with that, and you try to find the best deal. Should be the same with the schools. You are basically the child, at least here in Michigan, the child, they have that second Tuesday count in October where, that's what the school funding is partially based on. There's a dollar amount attached to that child. So if you want to take that money and you want to go to a private institution, whether that's religious-based or it's something else, do it. If you want to go to a highly respected public school, do it. That there should be absolutely no strings attached to that.
Let me break in on that and make one actual point. I think it's actually more important than focusing on vouchers as the vehicle itself, is focusing on the concept of backpack funding. Wherever that child goes with his backpack is where that funding goes. Whether we do that through vouchers, credits, other means, there's legitimate debates that can be had on that, but I think conceptually it's more important for us all to focus on the idea and the concept of backpack funding and not get nailed down to any specific vehicle such as vouchers.
Well, I mean, however that is, I just look, the state, if you're going to have the state involved, which I think a pretty strong case can be made for that. If you're going to have the state involved in this, and the child has a dollar amount attached to him each and every year, let that be mobile. All right? Let the free market work. Because when the free market is at work, everything excels. You know, some person that might have a unique teaching. Last year, a friend of mine, she was a third grade teacher. She did a GoFundMe because she wanted those exercise balls for the kids. The kids would sit on the exercise balls. Okay? Now, it's like, what the hell is this about? Studies had found that the kids basically, you know what, instead of just sitting in a chair, they were able to release some of their aggression. They were able to focus on what the teacher was talking about. Little innovative things like that, okay? When you allow the free market to work, when you allow people to actually excel at what they do professionally, great things, not good things, but great things happen. And I think that should be encouraged and promoted instead of allowing people like Joe screw things up.
Well, I'll quibble on the Joe part, but let me say I agree with you on most of what you said there. One of the things about, you know, standards of excellence and pushing people to go further, when we toured Arupe, they had a couple requirements and rules that they lived under there. First of all, everybody had a dress code. Young men always wore long sleeve shirts and ties, and young women dressed as business casual and appropriate clothing as well. Now, in addition to that, cell phones are not allowed in class. They stay in their lockers, and if they're found in class, they actually get disciplined for that. Just those little things, like you were saying, those are important. And then on the other side of the equation, these places also have their sports integrated, and then they also have the corporate program that I was talking about. And these kids actually go and work and get paid $16.40 an hour for the work they do in order to pay for their tuition at school. And that gives them a sense of pride, and those who may not excel on the academic side may excel on the business side and the entrepreneurial side. So those sort of innovations and allowing that to happen, it's important. Right now, on a national level, we have over 1 million people. I'm sorry. In Colorado, there are over 1 million people on a wait list for charter schools. On the national level, just to show you who comprises the people who attend charter schools, 29% of charter school enrollment is African American. 16% of traditional public school population is African American. Hispanics are 27% in charter schools now, and 23% in the traditional public school population. So the things that are happening, they really are benefiting those among us who are impacted greatly by whether it be institutional racism from the past or just those who are minorities and are affected by that, or those who are in the lower income categories. We need to embrace charter schools, public schools, and choice to help those people more and more each day. So that's where I want to leave it off. And I would also be remiss if I did not mention the fact that today's December 7th. if you're wondering why that's significant, I would suggest you hurry to your local library and investigate World War II and how it began. On this
If you
day,
don't know how
Japanese-
that's important, your public school has failed you and go to a charter school.
Yes, exactly. On this day, the Japanese performed a sneak attack on Pearl Harbor, which basically brought the United States into the Pacific Theater in World War II, and the rest is history. So on this day, we remember all those who were lost. USS Arizona still sits beneath the water in Honolulu, or not Honolulu, Hawaii, but in Hawaii, and you can go and visit and see it just below the surface. It's a kind of a haunting memorial to the greatest generation and some of the first people lost from America in that war. So I wanted to mention that and just have that out there. Right now, we are going to try and answer a question.
Can I mention one other thing real quick?
Yes.
It is also the birthday of one Fingers Malloy.
It is. It is. I actually told him that I would kick you in the junk as his present.
Oh, wow. You know what? That's sweet of you, Aaron.
Well, I care for him.
Unfortunately, when you're 3'5", you wouldn't be kicking. You would have to punch. And you'd be punching up, of course.
I'm always punching up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so happy birthday to the cousin, the Fingers Malloy, who, oddly enough, this is a bad joke, but he's also been bombed on this day. So there you go. Thank you very much.
All right, Joe. Where's Pope? Where's Pope Sparkles? I see Linatix Rex, and I see his question, but he didn't say whether or not it was an African swallow or a European swallow, so I'm not going to answer.
Hope Sparkles did ask a question, Aaron.
What was your question? I didn't see it.
Why isn't the voice of the people wearing his Mr. Rogers sweater?
Oh, that's a good question. What's going on there?
No. There actually was. I got dinged. A teacher wanted to ask a question about the school choice thing.
Oh, really?
And I told her to use, the RedState Weekly Briefing thingamadinger. Let me see.
Oh, she went to the event page?
No, she went to the event page, and she said, okay, so let me see. Charter schools do more with less. All for choice, but want details. How many kids are average in a classroom? Building size, etc.
Building size is actually an interesting question. In Colorado, the way that they do that is either the charter school has to come up with capital on its own to buy its own building, or the planned buildings that the district owns can be shared with those charter schools, because charter schools are technically under the district control. So that is an interesting question. On class sizes, let me go back on Arupe. I can answer that if I just average class size is 25 to 30, so that's not a bad ratio as far as teaching to individuals rather than groups go. Does that answer your question? Do you still have her?
Yeah, I'm taking a look. I told her to go to the RedState Weekly. Maybe she was intimidated by the hashtag. I don't know. I mean, I'd be intimidated by the hashtag if I didn't know Joe.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at him.
Joe looks intimidating.
My God, is he? I can't. You know what? I don't want to meet him.
I mean, he totally looks like he represents rape culture all the time.
Joe is rape culture. He wakes up in the morning and he stinks of rape. That's right, Joe. Joe, you bought that red Rolling Stone magazine and you rolled around in it. You were so happy. You're like, this represents me. Right, Joe?
Joe, do you have anything to say in your defense?
They didn't use the hashtag, so I'm not going to do it, but somebody is asking us about conspiracy theory and the apocalypse and the Twin Towers. Should we take that question?
Hey, read the question. I'm interested.
Well, I'm debating actually retweeting it. Let's see. Pictures go with the press release. Read all the links. What are your thoughts? Let's see.
Oh, I see this, yes.
Yeah, let's...
Well, it's got a pentagram, so... You know, as a Christian, I automatically have to think that something evil is happening here.
What are we talking about? What?
I don't know. LaDuke,
Look at your
LaDuke, you're in it. It's from Kevin Seeley.
Yeah.
Hi, 144. Hey, he's not crazy at all, man.
Baha'i under
Apparently, France,
the
the
Protestant
Davidic
covenant or something
King,
like that.
Russia, the U.S., and the UK, and New Jerusalem all come together for something really, really evil. But honestly, I don't see anything, any time.
Let me. Let me.
Kevin, hang on. I'm just going to go here. Kevin Seeley, we are not going to answer that question because you did not use the hashtag RSWB, so that is a void question. We will not be answering this on the air.
Oh,
From now on, Kevin Seeley, please make sure you answer all tweets in the form of a question. Thank you.
No, I was going to say, look, if it has anything to do with, okay, New Jerusalem in New Jersey, okay, Nostradamus covered this in his Quatrain 84. That's 84. Okay, so all you have to do, if it has to do with New Jerusalem and New Jersey, go to Quatrain 84. Nostradamus in 1583 covered this in detail. And you can also go to Alex Jones' site and buy 6 months' worth of food because you know what? I'm hungry.
I saw Nostradamus 1854 open for Sublime in 1992.
No, 1554, not 1854, you doofus.
No.
What kind of Neanderthal are you? What kind of Neanderthal are you, Aaron Gardner? What?
I'm the best kind. Best kind.
Yes. That is what too hard to do. They don't make. Oh yeah. Whatever. I am amused by questions of conspiracy. I love it. I thrive in it. I bathe in it. I am the voice of the people, and the people are never wrong. So please, in the future, do send those questions to hashtag RSWB, and I will answer them for you and enlighten you in new ways you never thought possible.
And speaking of that, LaDuke, how can the people find you?
Well, Aaron, that's a great question. They can find me on Bourbon on the Rocks and FTR Radio Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. And then also on the Snark Factor with Fingers Malloy Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Or Irish Duke 2 on Twitter, LaDuke at FTRradio.com. Or I'm guiding Aaron Gardner around places to find free Mountain Dew.
Joe, where can the people find you?
The people.
You can find me on RedState.com, on my own personal website, NiceLifeIndustries.com. That's all one word. You can find me on Twitter at JoeC_Esquire. And you can also find me in various places in various states of undress on the internet.
Absolutely frightening. My name is Aaron Gardner. I'm the managing editor of RedState.com. You can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter at Aaron_RedState. Or, I'm sorry, at Aaron_RS. Don't miss a new episode of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Friends, hosted by Leon Wolf from Red State, who is joined by F. Bill McMorris, Neil Dewing, and Jake Riso, each week on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Make sure you're missing one of the hashtag BATF. And as always, Red State TV. LaDuke, kick that music.
Them dudes are smart.
What?
I said them dudes are smart.
Those guys are very intelligent, so you
missed one of
you watch us, you probably won't want to watch them.
Okay, well, I guess so do I turn the music up now? Is that what I do?
That's how we end the show each week.
This is actually our first show, so LaDuke is learning this for the first time. Yes, this is when you turn on the music.
Anytime now. All right. We'll see y'all next week.
No doubt.